All right, so let's take a bit of a closer look at the suburbia of the 1950s. It was something that was mentioned in our first video within the last lecture, and we're going to take a little bit of a closer look at that. So, the pace and magnitude of the rise of suburbia is astounding in the 1950s. The number of houses in the U.S. doubles, and nearly all of them are built in the suburbs in this period. And these suburbs are also playing a central role in our economic expansion. One of the main engines of economic growth during the 1950s was, in fact, residential construction and the spending on more consumer goods, which those two things kind of go hand in hand. One of the biggest symbols and manifestations of this is Levittown. Levittown is something that was mentioned in that first video, but I've got another newsreel here that's going to talk to you a little bit more in depth about what that exactly meant and what it was.
5 years ago, this was a vast checkerboard of potato farms on New York's Long Island. Today, a community of 60,000 persons living in 15,000 homes, all built by one firm. This is Levittown, one of the most remarkable housing developments ever conceived. The idea that came to a man named Bill Levitt was this: why not apply to the building of houses the same principles that have brought other American industries to their unexcelled peaks of efficiency and service? Why not mass produce the elements that go to make up a house, just as the auto industry does with the parts that go into a new car? Bill Levitt had some other ideas. Put kitchen and bathroom back to back and let them share the same plumbing. Let your plumbers do their work without interruption and without waiting for the carpenter or the bricklayer to get out of the way. Pre-cut your lumber so it's all ready to be assembled into the frame of a house. With the waste removed, one truck can deliver to the building site all the rough lumber that will go into 2 complete Levitt homes. It's really a matter of organization and planning, getting rid of waste motion. When the foundation is ready, coils for the radiant heating are there. Not a day too soon or a day too late. Without delay, the steam fitters finish their work and move on to the next house, and right behind them come the masons to lay the underflooring. Power-driven trowels make the job a lot easier and faster. Levittown houses are not prefabricated. Prefabrication means a factory operation in which large quantities of materials are kept moving to the workers. Here, the opposite is true. The construction crews are moved to a waiting line of materials. This sort of organization and efficiency is all important in the vast defense housing program. That's the next order of business for the nation's home builders. The architecture of the houses in Levittown is varied enough to eliminate dreary monotony, while at the same time enough alike to permit the savings that result from standardization. Many housing projects are a sea of mud when it rains, but not this one. A wide range of color schemes also brings variety. So here's the home that cost its happy owners just $9,000. And that includes such extras as a completely equipped kitchen, a 2-way fireplace, a finished room in the attic, and even a washing machine. The living room. Levittown is a community of young people, and that means a great need for schools. Space has been set aside for plenty of them. Dotted here and there throughout the huge area are shopping centers where every type of product or service is readily available. Shoe stores, 5 and dimes, department stores, supermarkets, and banks. In addition, there are other facilities designed to draw residents together to help make them feel they are part of a real community. Recreation centers with provisions for filling leisure hours, summer or winter. Yes, that old potato patch has come to a good end.
All right, so that gives a nice, kind of interesting, almost a advertisement for Levittown. The photo at the top there is kind of an aerial view of Levittown and what they looked like. All of their sort of similar houses stacked up in rows and things like that. Levittown, as I mentioned, was built on Long Island in New York and was the brainchild of William and Alfred Levitt, and it became the most famous of suburban developments. More than 10,000 homes were assembled quickly from prefabricated parts and priced within reach of most Americans. All of them looked generally alike and had some fairly strict rules for living in the neighborhood. Deeds to the property prohibited things like picket fences that might make the house stand out or look different from its neighbor. They also mandated things like regular lawn mowing. They specified when wash could be hung to dry in the backyard. All the town streets were curved at the same angle, and trees were planted every 28 feet. So everything fairly regimented in Levittown. Levittown also contributed, or things like Levittown, suburban areas also contributed to things like need for shopping centers that were closer by. Generally speaking, the suburbs were built far from city centers, and so we needed a new form of shopping center, which often took the form of the shopping mall, where people would drive their cars to go and visit. California is probably the most prominent symbol of the post-war suburban boom. By 1963, California surpassed New York as the nation's most populous state, and Los Angeles became a kind of blueprint, I guess you could say, for the centerless city. Rather than consisting of a downtown business district that was linked to residential areas via public transport, as you would see in older areas of the United States on the East Coast, Los Angeles was a decentralized cluster of homes and businesses woven together by a web of highways, and other Western cities would follow that blueprint, places like Houston and Phoenix. Shopping centers were also rise as a symbol of this kind of suburban nation and consumer culture. They did, people in suburbs did their shopping at shopping centers that could be easily reached only by car. As shopping centers grew, old downtown business districts often stagnated as well. Another interesting thing that we'll see as a development, as a result of this move towards suburban life, is going to be lawns. Generally speaking, when people lived in cities, lawns were not a thing that they had. That the spread of suburban homes created millions of new lawns, and today more land is in cultivation with grass than any other crop in the United States. Consumer culture is also very closely linked to this idea. And the ideology of American consumerism became a kind of core of belief or understanding of American freedom and a measure of American superiority. There are two, of course, really key elements to this consumer culture in the 1950s, and the first of these is television. By the 1950s, nearly 9 out of 10 American families had at least one television set, and the TV changed everything. It revolutionized how we took in information, replacing the newspaper as the most common source of information. It changed the way that we relaxed and we enjoyed ourselves, our leisure time. It even changed the way we ate with the invention of TV dinners, following not soon after, not terribly long after the TV itself. We're also going to see some predominant themes in programming and advertising that comes up on the TV. And that's because the TV is the first truly national broadcast medium. Radio stations tended to still be fairly localized, but with televisions, we have national broadcast companies. And so that means that someone in California and someone in New York could be watching the exact same program at the exact same time. And so we can really standardize the message. With very few exceptions, TV avoided controversy in favor of bland depictions of middle class life. Dominant programs were things like quiz shows, westerns, and comedy set in suburban homes. Also, it became the most effective advertising medium ever invented, pretty much. Another key element of this American consumerism is, of course, the automobile. Now, the automobile has been playing a growing role in American life ever since its invention in the early 20th century. By the 1950s, Americans are a bit more discerning in what they want. They want the latest car with all of the latest modern conveniences. Just like we see in an earlier decade in the 1920s, Americans are again urged to buy now and pay later, with Americans purchasing roughly 58 million new cars over the course of the decade. And the automobile is going to have a huge impact on our economic boom. It will impact the American landscape with shopping centers popping up, roadside motels, drive in movie theaters, roadside eateries, or fast food joints. All of these things made possible by the greater dissemination of the automobile itself. It's also going to vastly affect our travel habits and emerge as a new symbol of freedom. Cars were essentially the pivot on which suburban life turned. Suburbs were built far away from city centers, and pretty much the only way that you could get into work in the city was to drive your car from your house in the burbs to your job in the city. Automobiles, along with the new interstate highway system, made possible long distance vacationing by car, but also commuting to and from work at increased distances. So, that is our look at this. Our next place that we're going to look at is women, how this new decade affected women.